Okay, well, welcome everyone. We'll respect the fact that you've turned up on time and other people will file in and join us. We've got myself here and Levi. Hey, Levi.
Hello.
We're going to be talking about the issue of compliance within a firm and specifically focusing on engagement letters. We're going to be here to help you and share everything that we've learned while we've been in this space around it. And obviously, we get to hear about lots of people's challenges and problems that they've encountered and what we've done over that time to help protect them from it. So this is just going to be a really valuable session for you. At the end of it, we're going to be explaining about Oversweet. And for those of you who don't currently have Oversweet, how Oversweet can help you with this regard and how it can protect you and speed this up and how we can constantly manage this for you. And Levi will be taking that and talking you through it. But like I said, I just want to make this first part really useful and just highlight what's going on in your firm. So here we go, guys. So my first question for you, genuine question, and I would just like you to, could you just put in the chat, why did you start your accountancy firm? But just take a second to consider what is the real genuine reason you did this. More freedom for yourself, Adrian? Is that what you were thinking, setting up your own accounting business? Independence with my family, flexibility to look after my son. Yes. I wanted to move back from tech and not to be held back. To provide a personal service. By the way, guys, I love the fact that you've done it for yourself there. That it's really important that I always try and help people to get this balance right. The reason why you set up an accountancy business or why you set up any business should be for yourself primarily. You should be at the center of all of that to get that freedom, to get, financial freedom or to get time freedom, etc. That's great. In theory, work-life balance. Yeah, that's great. Brilliant. Thank you. And then we started to talk about to change the way that accounting services are delivered and perceived by the end users. Thank you, Will. To be able to help small businesses in their aspirations and their growth. Thank you. To be in control of my career. Brilliant. Beautiful answers. Thank you, guys. And that's the type of thing that I would expect. So first, to put yourself in this first and foremost, that you're wanting to get something positive out of this, that you want freedom, that you want more money, that you want more time. Fantastic. But also that you want to impact your clients in a positive way. And I genuinely feel privileged to have been in this space for the number of years that I have. And everyone that I encounter, you're just like really good people. Like you just genuinely want to help your clients and do the very best you can. And obviously, hopefully benefit from it yourselves as well. So thank you for that. The challenge, though, is that you do all of your training to go into this business. And then all of these things pop up to prevent you from achieving that. So you've got to learn about marketing. How do you get your customers in the first place? How do you recruit good staff? Where do you get them from? What's your recruitment process like? And then once you've got them, all of the staffing challenges that you then encounter on an ongoing basis, and everyone's got staffing challenges. How do you train your staff? How do you keep your staff? How do you pay them more, etc.? How you handle difficult clients. Every single person on this call has got difficult clients or has had difficult clients or is dealing with difficulties right now. Pitters, I believe that you call them, if you want to do your own translation on that. Systemizing your business so that it can scale, so that it can run without you, so that you can deliver your work to a high degree of accuracy consistently every single time across your entire team, so that you can price, and you have to be able to price and sell your services effectively. There's no point doing this. You just told me that you want money and you want time. And so if you're not making money from this, then kind of what's the point of doing it all? And also you need to get your compliance and legals correct as well. And the challenge is that you become a professional and an expert in your craft, whether that's accounting or bookkeeping or tax advice, whatever your specialism is. You then, through whatever route you've got to, decided to set up your own business in this space. And then you have all of these other things that you have to learn, and you have to learn them fast. And they don't train you in all of those things, or they certainly don't train you to the level that you need to be able to survive commercially in this world as well. And so you have all of these challenges, but there's one of them that really sticks out. And it sticks out by the fact that it doesn't stick out. And I'll explain what I mean, which is the compliance and legal side of things. If you fail to get the other things right, so your marketing, your recruitment, staff challenges, systemizing, pricing, selling, it becomes obvious to you. It will become glaringly obvious because you don't have the clients coming in. You don't have the staff to be able to serve them. You're not making enough money. If you don't have your compliance and legals correct, there's a good chance that you don't know it. It doesn't ever show itself. And the other thing is, If you get all of those other things right, if you're brilliant at your marketing, brilliant at getting staff, brilliant at pricing and selling, you benefit. The upside is massive in terms of what you can get out of your business. If you get your compliance and legals right, you don't get many benefits from it. It just protects you from things going wrong. So it's the one thing that is easy not to spot when it's wrong. And when you get it right, you kind of feel like, what's the point? Why should I be putting all of this effort and time and money into actually fixing it? So I've shown you this diagram before, and what I've always tried to do is to help to really understand the challenges that you guys face, and then to be able to communicate it back to you in a way that is easily understood. So the challenge that many of you face is that when you start relationships with a client, you typically start out by offering to do them more than you're getting paid for. Typically, that scope of work increases over time. And on top of that, you expose yourself to unnecessary risk. You expose yourself to risk because normally engagement letters aren't solid enough in the first place. And one of the reasons why the scope increases is because clients come to you or your team members and just ask for extra things. And if you're not able to easily add them into an engagement letter, typically what happens is your members of staff just go and do that work. I was just going through some Facebook messages before this just to remind myself of stories that people have told me. And there's an accounting firm who now uses Oversuite and GoProposal, and they'd got themselves into a bit of a tangle with a client throughout COVID, because throughout COVID, they just stepped up and did all these extra things. The client was asking for all this extra work and everything was going brilliantly, and they were just stepping up and doing all this stuff for free, thinking that they were helping their clients out. The relationship further on soured for various reasons. And then the client then started to go back about all those extra things that had been done for free from a good place, from kindness, from genuinely wanting to help that business, because none of it was covered in an engagement letter. And they started to question all of those things. And so it really pains me when I look at this model here to think that you're doing all of this extra work, that you're not getting paid enough for it, and that you are exposed to this unnecessary risk for if something was to go wrong. And something can seem great now. You can have a great relationship with a client. You've done all these extra things. You think things are going good, but you have no idea what's going to happen in the future. I get to see many businesses and hear the inner workings of those businesses. And I know so many things that can go wrong. And we have to do our very best to protect ourselves. I'm a really positive person, and people think I'm a hugely positive and kind of always see the glass half full, etc. I just try and see the glass, right? And I'm actually always thinking about what can go wrong, and I'm always doing my very best to protect the downside of things in my own business. And you have to get the balance right of that. You have to figure out what can go wrong and what can we do to protect ourselves, whilst at the same time thinking what can go right and how can we spot all these opportunities and grow. And it's a really difficult balancing act, because you as the business owner wants to be driving things forward, serving your clients, getting paid for it, whilst protecting this downside as well. Just to everyone, while I'm talking through this, if you want to ask me a question or you want to raise it for the team, please put it in the Q&A box. The chat box is for you there to comment on points that I'm saying, but to chat amongst yourselves. So I'm not necessarily going to manage the webinar chat. If you want me to see something or the team see something, please put it in the Q&A box. Thank you. Where we need to get your business to, in my mind, let's go back to that diagram there, is we want to turn it from this to this. We want to make sure that you're getting paid for all of the hard work that you do, and we want to minimize the risk as much as possible. We can never fully remove the risk. The very fact that you're in business means that you are always going to be exposed to an element of risk. But what we want to do is to minimize the impact of that as much as possible so that it won't cause us concerns moving forward. So what I want to just focus on is why you are specifically exposed to risk. So first of all, you deal with complex clients. Clients are complex. Your services are complicated, but your clients are complex. They can be business partners, there can be partnerships that go wrong. I've got a friend of mine at the moment who's in a partnership with someone else in a business, and it's all gone horribly wrong. And they're just trying to figure this through now. And it's a very bitter situation that they're trying to solve and work through and get mediated. And I'm not sure of the outcome of that. But businesses by their nature are very, very complex. You can have man and wife businesses, and which is great whilst they're married, but not if they necessarily get divorced. You can have partnerships that sour. You can have complexities of businesses operating in different territories and various things. And you will know a certain extent of that, and you should know as much about your client as possible. And we've covered a lot of that with the AML work that we've done recently. But that complexity can be huge. And I've just got kind of certain friends that I'm just thinking about right now with businesses that are in multiple companies, different partnership structures and arrangements. Some businesses going well, some businesses not going well, and they're just hugely complex. The next thing is you have to handle sensitive data for your clients, for their clients perhaps as well, that you have access to. You may have to have sensitive data from multiple directors or partners within a business, and that data has to be held separately from those different people within there. That can't be shared. So you're handling a lot of very sensitive data, and so is your team as well. You have to give critical advice to your clients, and this has been a huge problem for some firms, especially over recent years, whereby you have to make it very clear what the advice is for. So I know there's been some big firms, and I don't want to kind of fill you with fear as you're going through this, but some big firms that have had multi-million-pound fines whereby they have given advice in this plane, but the client has then used that advice for something else. And because it wasn't clearly articulated in the terms, the firm didn't have a leg to stand on. So I was just jokingly talking to I was with a firm the other week, and I was talking about this exact thing. And I was with all of their team in a room, and I said, if I rang you up today and said, look, we're looking at getting electric cars. I've been looking at this Tesla or this. Can you just tell me whether it kind of stacks up financially from a tax perspective? But I need it today. I'm in the showroom. I've got to sort it out. I've got to buy it today. My car's falling apart. Can you let me know whether we should go with it or not? What are you going to do? Are you genuinely going to produce a new engagement letter? Are you going to explain what the advice is for? Are you going to charge me for it? Or would that team member, if they can't do all of that, just go ahead and do it? And the large number of people in that room said, we would just go and do it. I said, cool. What if I then rang you back half an hour later and said, oh, thank you so much for that advice. I've just ordered 11,000 Teslas for everyone at Sage. Like, hang on a minute. I didn't mean it for everyone. I just meant it for you. And I'm like, too late. I've taken your advice and I've applied it for that. And so obviously that's an extreme, ridiculous example. But my point is unless you clearly articulate what you are giving that advice for, then you're exposing yourself to risk. And what could seem like you're doing something out of the kindness of your heart because it's fast, because someone wants a mortgage application doing, or whatever, you need to protect yourself in every single scenario. And that was the big thing when I was going back through my messages earlier, and the guy that had messaged me when he had that client where the relationship had soured, they did end up getting a small fine because it was prior to using Oversweet. But what came back from the regulator was, it doesn't matter how small that piece of work is, it has to be identified and covered off in an engagement letter. Never, ever do anything for free, even if you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. Again, going back to COVID, I know people did things for free, and I always believe you should charge for it. But if there was ever a time you're doing it for free, still make sure it's included in an engagement letter, and just, nil rate that fee that you're charging for that client, but never miss it off the engagement letter completely if you're providing it for free. Always make sure it's covered. You have to pay bills sometimes on behalf of your clients, and you have to pay their staff as well, which can cause huge problems if you get this wrong, because it affects so many people. In the accounting firm, my accounting place that I was a director of previously, paying bills for clients caused us some huge issues. You only had to get that once wrong a couple of times, and you would wipe out the entire profit for that service across all of your clients. And they actually got to a point where they decided not to provide that service anymore because it was too much risk. I think even there was one point where we had a fake bill sent in for Go Proposal. Someone had raised an invoice, a fake company, it got paid, and it was kind of concluded it was half our fault, half their fault. But, or the scam artists and various people as well. And if you're involved in that and providing a service around that way, you could get scammed as well. Again, who's exposed to that risk? You've also got to help them to meet deadlines and obligations. All of your clients that failed to get their tax returns done on time, if they didn't get done and they were turning up to you towards the end of January, despite the fact that you've been asking for that information, whose fault is that? You know. Now, the way I think about getting all of this stuff right, and the reason why we have to protect against this, is a little bit like my martial arts training. So years ago, I spent over 10 years training to be a second Dan black belt in martial arts and in something called combat jiu-jitsu. And I was talking to someone recently and they said, oh, have you ever had to use it? And I'm like, no, never had to use it. And he kind of questioned the effort I'd therefore put in for 10 years, turning up every single week, the pain of going through it, all of that training, etc., in order to get this skill to be able to protect me and protect my family, despite the fact that I've never used it. But I know there've been a couple of incidences where I've certainly been able to make sure that we're not part of the trouble because I've been aware of it. But it only ever has to serve me once. If once in my life I use this knowledge, it was therefore worth it in my mind. And that's very much how I perceive getting your legals right and your engagement letters right in your firm. But why it's sometimes therefore difficult to rationalize and justify why you should spend a good amount of money on making sure you get this right. Because you can think, well, I've never used it. It only has to be used once. It only has to pay you back once and kick in one time to more than cover itself. Because there are only two types of firms: those who have had a claim made against them, or those who are going to have a claim made against them. We live in a far more litigious society, and when things go wrong with businesses, they're very quick to look for people to blame. And you can think you have a good relationship with them and a good friendship with them, but I assure you, when their back's up against the wall and something has hit the fan, they will be looking to get money back from you or to be able to claim from you if at all possible. Solid, robust engagement letters will help to protect you in this scenario. So before we just go into how to actually do that, I just want to go through a few mistakes that people make when they're trying to fix this huge problem in their business. So the first one is, and we came to really understand this when we built Oversuite out a few years ago, is engagement letter templates. So I always thought that engagement letter templates were sufficient. You know, you pay your money to your professional body and they hand you these engagement letter templates, which are effectively a set of documents, and they say, there you go and figure it out. But it's a bit like getting all of these building blocks and you've got to now figure out how to correctly assemble them for your firm and for your clients as well, to make sure that you can bridge this compliance gap perfectly in a strong, robust way. But you don't necessarily have the expertise to do that. You've not been trained in how to do that. And you can make a small mistake and it can nullify the entire document. For example, in the footer of an engagement letter, you have to get your legal entity right. You know, you have to mention your professional body correctly. You have to cover off perhaps partners or directors or get your address right and various things like that. If you get those components wrong, it can make the entire legal document fall apart because it hasn't got the correct legal footer in. Could you imagine that? You've done all this work for the client, you've got the engagement letter right, but you've got the footer wrong, and therefore the whole document doesn't stack up legally. So you've got to make sure that your engagement letter templates are constructed in the right way. If there are any changes made to your business, that it perfectly reflects that, and it also reflects the needs of the clients as well. The next one is they don't get updated regularly, which is a tough thing to do, I know, but regulations change. You know, when Brexit happened and GDPR regulations changed, how many of you went and immediately changed your engagement letters across all of your client base? Because all of those updates that are happening, and there are constant updates, you need to go and make those changes in your engagement letters for your clients. Sometimes, and I've heard of this, where firms have gone to lawyers to get their engagement letters done. And whilst lawyers can be great at this, they don't necessarily have the regulatory expertise for the accounting industry. We've had many discussions with lawyers around this, and they will admittedly hold their hand up and say, whilst we can protect you from kind of general terms and conditions points of view, but even then there's certain scenarios that they just don't know about. But they what they can't do is protect you from the rest of the things that your professional body should be helping you with, and the regulation side of things as well. But also, even with the terms and conditions, as I'm saying that, I know that they're not aware of all the nuances with it. That we had to really study when we produced Oversuite. I remember one scenario, and I won't be able to quite get this right, but it's if your client does something wrong where they need reporting, but they then leave you to go to another accountancy firm, and you're not legally allowed to tell the other accountancy firm, but because they're no longer your client, you're not allowed to report them, and you're not allowed to invoice them, and you can get locked in a position where you can't do it legally, you cannot do anything, yet this client owes you money, and the other accountancy firm is needing information from you, and you can't provide it, and you can't report them. And so there's all these very clever clauses that actually need to be worked in there that a general lawyer may not understand. They may well do, but they largely would not understand, that you would need to protect you in this industry, because it's quite difficult. Another mistake that people can make with engagement letters is make them overly complicated. So what they think is, if I cover everything off to a ridiculous extent, then I'm more protected. But if the client doesn't understand it, then they could argue that it doesn't actually serve them. And so an overly complicated, overly protected engagement letter can actually work back against you if the client fundamentally doesn't understand it. And also, there are some professional bodies that they have, like, for example, the service schedules will list out many, many things that you're required to do, that it says you're going to do for the client, where what we found through our studies and our work with the leading experts in this space was, in actual fact, sometimes you're better off paring it back down and making it simpler, because the moment you commit to doing all of those things, you have to do all of those things. Where in some scenarios, it's better to limit what you're saying and to be more general, because then if there are certain scenarios where you haven't been able to do that thing, you're actually more protected. It's the same with things like refund policies. If you don't have, I'm just going to caveat this, sorry, you need to make sure that if you've done the work for a client that they can't get the money back from you, you need to make sure that's covered. But in terms of a specific refund policy, if you don't have one, that can actually make you more protected, because what it means is that you can negotiate for the specifics of that scenario if you ever face that situation. And it may well be that you don't want to give a refund at all, right? But you need the freedom to be able to do that, where the moment you commit to a full refund policy, you are now saying that you have to commit to that with every client in every single scenario, where maybe that's not useful. So sometimes it's actually better, it makes more sense to make things simpler in an engagement letter as well. Automating rubbish. As you all know, rubbish in, rubbish out. Sometimes people think they have a really good system in place because it's automating it, and they're pressing a button and the engagement letter is getting spewed out, and therefore it looks quite good. But if what was put in there in the first place isn't correct, then certainly what comes out won't be correct. And this is kind of the worst strategy I see, is people using hope. They think they've got an engagement letter in place. So you go to all these firms, have you got an engagement letter? Have you got? Yes. And to them, it's a tick box exercise. They think they've done enough, but what they're actually relying upon is hope. And if they're relying on hope, they're sitting on a time bomb. So I just want to give you some specific examples here, guys, that we've learned of over the years. So refunds is quite a common one. We had someone post in the GoPros community recently where a client had come to them claiming a refund for, they were leaving them, and they were just trying to get, the relationship was over. They wanted as much money back. So they were claiming a full refund for the last 12 months and had gone to a law firm to get this, the refund. I know we've got people on this call like Danielle. Danielle, it might be worth you just finding that, and just for everyone in the GoPros community, just flagging that to, pinning that to the top of the community so people can actually read that one. But because they had Oversuite in place, the moment the law firm that they'd engaged saw it, they immediately backed down and said, yeah, we've got no claim here. We can't claim any money back. So it was very quickly put forward and the situation was solved. Without that, they may have had to give a full refund, certainly part of it, but it would have taken them a lot of time to resolve that. Dealing with complaints, getting sued, or having legal action taken against you is a very real scenario. And, you know, the standout story for me with this, and again, I don't want to fill you with fear. I don't want you That's not what I want to do. I'm always very mindful of that, that kind of people feel that you're going to be sued for millions and all this stuff unless you protect yourself with this. But just to be very specific, there was a story where a man and a wife company had engaged an accountancy firm and everything was fine, okay, until the man and the wife got a divorce. And when and it was not a good divorce, acrimonious, is that the right word? When the wife then looked at the situation, only the husband had signed the engagement letter. So it didn't have multiple signatures on it. So the husband had signed for everything, and therefore the accounting firm was acting on his instructions for everything. And she was saying, well, why have you taken instruction from him when we were both directors of the business? So she went to the professional body and she tried to get them involved and tried to take action against them. And the professional body rejected her claim. She then went to a lawyer, and the law firm got involved to try and sue them, and et cetera, et cetera. And again, it wasn't upheld. They managed to reject the claim as well. She can say, well, what's the problem? The problem was it took over, and this number like chills me when I hear it, over 250 hours of the accountancy firm owner's time to solve the problem. 250 hours. Imagine if someone came to you and said, I need you for 250 hours over the next 3 months, or over the next 6 months, you have no choice, you have to do it, you're not going to be paid for it, and it's going to be highly stressful. Like, could you imagine if that happened? If you were a small business and that happened to you, that could be enough to end a business. But if you had the legals and everything correctly in place, simply passing that over would have stopped it dead in its tracks. And these are the time bombs that I refer to that fill me with fear when I hear about them. Someone just asked a question here. How do refunds work when people pay annual accounts during the year, but they leave mid-year? That's a great question. I'm not sure if we have a clause. Danielle will be able to answer that better. But again, this is the reason why not having a refund policy can help you to negotiate that. In the firm that I was a director of, what we'd always do is we would give, I can speak if you want me to. Go on, Danielle, go on, speak.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Yeah, just with that, because we've had this situation quite a lot. So what you tend to find is if you've done annual accounts, you might still have done some work for the client throughout the year. So what you want to have in place is a situation where you're not obligated to give a refund, but like James was saying before, you can negotiate. So you can go back to the client and say, well, yeah, we haven't filed your final accounts, but we have done X, Y, Z throughout the year, which has helped us progress towards filing those accounts. And so it becomes a negotiation. So you might not refund the whole cost, but you might be able to negotiate that down a little bit. And that's how we would tend to handle things like annual accounts.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And you may choose to give, a percentage back, or you don't have to give any of it back, but that's why you want that flexibility to be able to negotiate that situation. Yeah. Thanks, Danielle. Thank you. We've got Danielle here with us as well, by the way. So we've got the full team here. So that's why you're sitting on a time bomb. And just finally, before we get into the solution, it's why it's even tougher for you. You've got to fulfill your regulatory obligations, for the services that you provide, that you have to uphold your professional body's regulations as well. And we've seen even more fines from those over recent years. I'm not sure if some of them are struggling to make money, but they seem to have been quick to issue fines when people haven't been meeting their regulatory obligations, which seems a shame, but there we go. You've got to perfectly reflect your firm's circumstances. And as those circumstances change, you've got to keep it updated as well. You've got to scope it for the entities that you serve. And these can be very nuanced. So, for example, if you provide an engagement letter to a charity, there's like so many different variations of that charity and how it's set up and where it's registered and what territories it covers, etc. In order for you to pick the correct engagement letter out, you would need a library of 504 scopes, just the scope element for charities, and you would need the correct expertise to go and pick that exact scope out for that charity. That is such an arduous task. You would need a full compliance department just to be able to deal with that. And that was why when we planned all of this out and we built the system that copes with this and we brought the experts in, the brief was, could my daughter, Scarlett, who's 11 years old, produce a fully compliant engagement letter for a charity in under 5 minutes while she was sat with them? And the answer is she could. So that was the brief that we set our team, that someone with no skill, no knowledge could do this, because we wanted to bake the knowledge into the system. We wanted the system to be intelligent and didn't have to rely on the intelligence or the expertise of the person doing it, because the likelihood is they just wouldn't have that knowledge. They wouldn't have that expertise, because you'd have to be a fully compliant expert that was constantly studying this subject and keeping themselves up to date to do it. And the reality is that smaller firms cannot afford to do that. You also have to meet the specifics of each client engagement. So things like key dates, it might seem like a small thing, but it's no good just having one date in an engagement letter that says we're going to engage you from this date if they're going to continue to run payroll themselves for another month. Their previous accountant is going to, complete their last year's annual accounts, or is going to complete the next quarter's VAT return or something like that. You have got to be very specific to say, we're engaging you from this date. We're going to start these services on these dates. However, payroll isn't going to start until this date. The VAT return isn't going to start until this date, because there is no point in you taking responsibility for a service that you're not providing. So all of the key dates for every service has to be built into your engagement letters as well. And things like multiple signatures. Everyone involved in that engagement with that client has to be signing that engagement letter, and if they're a key person of responsibility within that situation, or whether they're just signing the privacy policy, or you're going to be taking instructions from them, or they're going to authorize a key person to take instruction from, or whatever. All of that needs to be mapped out in the engagement letter. And again, because it's a difficult thing to do, typically people avoid it. And again, the moment you do that, that time bomb just starts ticking away. And the final one is to be clear, so that all parties can understand. This is where we can actually use engagement letters to strengthen relationships. So something that we developed, and we've not really, I don't think we've talked about this too much, but I think it was a really important piece of work that we did, was this concept of the 7 degrees of progressive compliance. And so if you think you're on this scale somewhere, so you're either, and we can share this out, someone on the team, guys, can we just share this with everyone? Put a link to this or email this out afterwards. I think it's a really important document for people to measure themselves against. Did a lot of work around this. But are you non-compliant? Are you surface compliant? So it kind of appears that you are, but if people dug down further, you're not actually. Are you technically compliant? And are you managing practice risks? You can scale yourself. And most firms that we encountered are somewhere between 2 and 3. So they're either surface compliant or they're technically compliant. But what this actually is you're being internally focused. But because it's being compliant and getting your engagement letters in place is only ever seen as kind of a tick box exercise, people just flounder normally in these bottom 3. But what we actually focused on was, could you actually use these engagement letters to strengthen the relationship, to manage mutual risk between both parties, to set clear expectations with dates around filing deadlines and when we want information from them? And in the highest level, could this actually be used to demonstrate high levels of care, to build long-term relationships with your clients? So it's not something with small print that's used hidden away in a drawer that's going to be pulled out to hit someone over the head with if need be, but it's actually a very upfront document because it's very clear, it's very strong, and it's articulating the ways of working together. It's articulating key responsibilities, what you're going to do for them, what you expect them to do, how you're going to manage that relationship and build a strong lifelong relationship. That's what this should be, whereas I always kind of imagine like a relationship with a client a bit like a marriage. And, if your marriage contract was, just effectively like, what's going to happen if this goes wrong, how to protect us from getting a divorce, that's like the worst marriage contract, where a beautiful marriage contract would be how we can live a wonderful flourishing life together. That's what you want it to be, and that's effectively what you can do here if this is done properly. I think I've never heard of anyone talking about this before. So it's, how do you switch from something being internally focused and protective of yourself to being mutually focused and protective of the relationship. That's the switch that you can actually make to create something that strengthens this here. This is a concept that we pioneered. This just doesn't exist. And it's all about the highest, not about, let's go back here, compliance. It moves up then into risk management. But beyond that, it's all about governance and care. Governance and care is the highest level of progressive compliance, and that's where we want to be pushing all of you guys to into kind of 5, 6, and 7. So we'll send this out because some really interesting information here. It was a lot of work went into what might seem like a very simple document here, but I'm sure you'll get a lot from it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Levi, who is going to talk you through Oversweet. And whether Oversweet is right for you or not, all I would say is do something, guys. You've got to protect yourself against this because you're just not being fair to yourself. You're good people. You're wanting to do good work by your clients. So please just make sure that nothing comes to bite you because of it. Levi.
Thanks, James. So, hey everyone, I'm Levi and I'm the marketing executive here at Oversweet. So obviously James has explained the mistakes you may be making with your engagement letters and how detrimental it can be for your business if you don't have a robust engagement letter in place. But how can you avoid these mistakes and have full confidence that your firm is being compliant with every client and your engagement letters will protect you against all situations? Well, that's where Oversweet can help you. So firstly, it's the only solution in the market with expert advice built into each section of the system. So you can be fully confident that the documents that you issue will protect you should anything go wrong. Secondly, the engagement letters are clear, so you no longer need to decipher through templates, praying that the lengthy document that you've created will somehow protect you and relying on hope. They're made specific to your firm and they're created in less than 10 minutes, which I'll show you later. Another important factor is that our compliance experts review the contents of your Oversweet engagement letters every quarter. So they are consistently up to date and they're compliant with any regulatory changes. As Oversweet is extremely simple to navigate, all members of your team feel empowered and they feel confident to produce an engagement letter. So it no longer needs to solely be the business owner producing these documents and ultimately removing the bottleneck in your accounting business. And lastly, your engagement letter process is no longer laborious. It's no longer the tedious piece of admin at the end of an exciting conversation. You can draft and you can send an engagement letter in minutes, so you can save time and engage with clients quicker to improve the entire onboarding experience and show your client that you care, which is what James mentioned earlier. So now I've quickly run through how Oversweet can transform your engagement letter process. It's time to show you the system in action and show you how easy it is to use. So we've got some recorded video snippets of the app in action. So if James, you can just play this one, please. So when you sign up to Oversweet, the first thing you're going to want to do is access the Getting Started tab, and you can complete the engagement letter suite. By completing your engagement letter suite with some simple known inputs about your business, you'll create a library of smart engagement letters that are bespoke to your firm, and it takes less than 10 minutes. Next one, please, James. Another important thing to mention is you can customize your engagement letters further by adding yourself and your team into the key people section alongside your signature, and this is included on the agreement statement. Next one, please, Jen. Thank you. To personalize your engagement letters even further, you have space to add in your own branding, such as your signature color and your logo, to make your documents look even more professional to your client. After completing the engagement letter suite, you can issue your first engagement letter to see how all the information you previously inputted pulls through together. As you can see with the preview document, it has the logo and your colors, etc. Once you've raised your first engagement letter, if you do want to view the details further, you can head to Configure and Engagement Letters, and here you have a full overview of your full scope library. Next one, please, James. And whilst in this section, you can also configure other areas of the system, such as your line items, to discover the services that you can use and build upon in the engagement letter. And to speed up this process, we have also automatically assigned your service schedules. You can view the engagement letters raised at any point from your dashboard. And here you can also access your additional Oversuite documents. To view these, though, the engagement letter must have a 1 status. The key documents listed, such as your professional clearance letter and your disengagement letter, are linked directly to the engagement letter raised above. And lastly, if you are looking to automate your app stacks further, Oversuite supports additional integrations such as Go Cardless and Carbon. So of course, that was very quick. That was a very top level view of Oversuite. And as you can see, it is very easy to generate a library of smart engagement letters, and you can start issuing them right away. But if you do want a more in-depth view of the product, I'll put a link in the chat box to our on-demand demo, and I'll send it later on so you can just get a more in-depth view of how Oversuite works. And for anybody that is keen to start transforming their engagement letter process today and they want to give Oversuite a go, we do have an exclusive offer for everybody on this live event. So if you sign up for your 7-day free trial, you'll receive 50% off your first 2 months should you decide to activate your account. And again, you need a specific link for this, so I'll put that in the chat box alongside the demo, and I'll make sure it gets sent to you later today. Yeah, that was a very quick run through, obviously, but that's everything that you really need to know about Oversuite and how it will protect you and stop you making the same mistakes and solving the engagement letter problem in your firm. So I'll pass you back to James I don't know if I've missed anything, James, if you want to cover anything else. I went really quick there.
No, that was really cool. What we wanted to make sure this session was focused on, guys, was people understanding what the real issue is, and just to give people a flavour of how we've used Oversuite to solve this. We constantly get stories back from our members as to how it's been used to protect them. It gives them their shield of confidence, their phrases when they're engaging with each client. But obviously people will have specific questions if you don't currently use it, and we can use that time to, if you want to, like Levi said, to schedule a demo, and we can take you through all of the different nuances. You can understand all the different aspects of it and how it gets generated. I'm a big believer that within your business, the way a business grows is the way your system runs should be on systems. You shouldn't have people running your business. You should have systems running your business, and the people should run the systems. But then typically what happens is we then don't implement the correct system that allow the team to run it. So one of our core principles at GoProposal with everything that we've done from the start is, how can you empower the entire team? And one of our core principles is, how can the most junior member of your team produce a fully compliant proposal and engagement letter for your most complicated client within 5 minutes? And that's always what we've been trying to do. And Oversuite really kind of echoes that principle, because unless you can, the truth is, guys, unless you can do that, I guarantee your team will be doing things for your client that they shouldn't be doing, and you'll be exposed to risks that you're not even aware of. And so that's why you fundamentally need these types of systems in place that empower your entire team to be able to produce those engagement letters that you've got the confidence in will be fully accurate. And what we're doing constantly is always updating them. We're a successful business. We're a profitable business. And the fact that we're now part of Sage as well means we're a FTSE 100 company. We have got the resources to be able to be constantly putting into these, so we can be constantly investing in them. I do not know of any other organization that is investing in producing and updating engagement letters to the extent of we are. We're constantly doing it. We're constantly making them better and more robust. Any changes to legislations, any changes that the professional bodies make, we're constantly updating them and adding them in there. We get requests from with service schedules, and we've got a huge library of service schedules now, but people will put requests in for kind of more nuanced or unusual services, and we'll go and add those and put those into the app for you as well. So it's like you've got a compliance team in your business. Oversuite isn't just a piece of software. It's having those expertise and that compliance department, effectively, which is how we always positioned it, bolted onto your business, that we can be doing all of that for you. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like answering? Someone's asked a question there, and Danielle, you've answered in the chat. If you start with Oversuite, set up your line items, and then at a later date they decide to use Go Proposal for your pricing and proposals and change your line items, will this automatically change them in Oversuite? So Danielle's answered there. If you start off with Oversuite and want to move to Go Proposal plus Oversuite, you absolutely can do. It'll be a little bit of a manual process, but we will help you with that. So we will do as much as we can for you to make that seamless. But if you're not ready to go for the full Go Proposal and Oversuite system now, just start with Oversuite. Get started. Please just protect yourself against that. And then if at a later date you want to look at how you can price more profitably and sell more confidently as well, then we'll be able to help you to bolt Go Proposal on, so you've got the full onboarding system in your business as well. Does anyone have any other questions, or any current users in here that would like to share anything, or where they've opened it? What's the status of somebody cancelling their direct debit? Is that an indication that they've disengaged? That's a good question. Danielle, would you like to step in and answer that one?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry.
So it's a really good question. So you're servicing a client, and someone has said, someone's just cancelled the direct debits. They've not contacted you to disengage you. Before we answer these questions, guys, we always say we're not legal experts. We can't give you legal advice in your business. We work with experts. You've got to make sure that what you do in your business you are happy with, but we can certainly share what we know. What's the status of somebody cancelling their direct debit? Is that an indication they've disengaged from you?
I would have to check the disengagement terms in Oversuite, but we do have them and they are very robust. So I can go away and check them and drop you an email if you want to pop your email in the chat there.
Yeah. You know, I'm sure the way it's structured, Danielle, is that in order to remain engaged, they have to keep paying you. And so in that scenario where they no longer pay you, you then get control to kind of figure out how you want to handle that situation. What happens when a client doesn't do something that makes Companies House strike off the company? Can we disengage automatically on that basis? I think these are quite high-level legal questions that we're getting involved with here. Great questions, and we can certainly take them. And this is the beauty of working with us and with Oversuite, is because what we'll do is we can bring our experts on and we can do webinars with you where we can kind of have an open forum and you can get to ask these questions as well. Do you have any take on that, Danielle?
Yeah, I'd imagine this is something I'd typically run past Val, who's our expert in compliance, who works with on this, but I'd imagine if they haven't done something, which means they've been striked off, then that would absolutely be a precursor for disengagement. Yeah, I will double check, but yeah, I would say that definitely is.
The way the engagement letter is set up, the way the Oversuite is set up, is to give you control, so that ultimately, this is your business at the end of the day, if you choose to disengage because you need to disengage, you have to have that power. And so our engagement letters are structured in such a way that you can do that. And that's what I was explaining about earlier. There are certain scenarios, and I don't know the details of them specifically, but I remember them having explained to me, whereby something can go wrong, or they could do something, or they could start working with another accountant, and you can't disengage them because of your terms and conditions. You've locked yourself. You backed yourself into a corner and locked yourself in a position. And we wanted to make sure with Oversuite that you are never actually in that position. So you always have control to disengage that client if you want to. So that's the fundamental way that Oversuite is set up. Hey guys, any more questions? Okay, cool. I operate in Dubai.
Sorry, James, there's a question in the chat box.
Yeah, I've seen this here.
About...
Can I just check, we are using Oversuite in Go Proposal. If you're on Go Proposal and Oversuite, the letters of engagement are in there. Is that the main source of the letter of engagement, or do we need to log into Oversuite as well? No, it's the same system, Aaron. So if you have Go Proposal and Oversuite together, then all of the Oversuite system is with you there. You don't need to go anywhere else. You've got that there. We have built it as a separate system for someone who just wants to start out with their engagement letters, and that's, they want to kind of put their foot in the water with us and get that part protected and get that done first before they then move on to pricing and selling. So although it can be a separate system, if you've got that within Go Proposal, everything that you need is there, Aaron. So you're absolutely fine with that one. I operate in Dubai. Is Go Proposal Oversuite suitable for here? It depends. Again, Danielle will step in if I'm saying the wrong thing here. The way that Oversuite is set up is for you as a legal entity being in the UK. So it's set up around UK law because that is where your business is. But it would allow you to work with companies overseas, I believe, but it would be brought back to UK law if that was the situation. Now, if you had a separate entity, a separate business, you're a different accounting business in Dubai that was operated from there, then Oversuite wouldn't work in that scenario because obviously that business would have to have all the legals in place for that territory, and we're only in the UK at the moment. So if your accounting business is based in the UK, then if you have Oversuite, that is geared up to allow you to work with companies overseas. Is that correct, Danielle? Just correct me if I've said anything wrong.
That's bang on.
Yeah, cool. Is Oversuite suitable for a larger firm with, say, multiple offices and circa 200 staff? Absolutely. We've got top 30 firms with multiple offices, hundreds of staff using this. And we've worked with them very closely to make sure that the system is perfectly aligned to be able to do that. It works with great success. So there is no issue with any size of a firm there, whether you're a one-man band starting out, not a one-man band, an army of one starting out, or whether you are a very large firm, multiple offices, multiple partners, it can absolutely cater for that. Danielle, did you want to add to that for larger firms?
No, I think that's all correct. If you're a larger firm, it will work with you. If you get into the system and find there are additional things you need, then just reach out to us, and we'll have that conversation with you and work with you to make sure that it does work. But yeah, I don't see why there would be any barriers to that whatsoever.
No, and if you are a larger firm, just reach out to us. We'll assign you a specific account manager, and we can work with you very, very closely. The biggest thing that we find with larger firms is getting you comfortable with how Oversuite works, and to make sure that you're happy with any differences that we've got in our system versus what you have. Sometimes there can be discrepancies between the way that we have things in Oversuite versus the way that you have things, and it's about having a discussion so you understand how we've arrived at those conclusions and how that will protect you. Also within Oversuite, by the way, guys, although we create the engagement letters for you, you can take control over any clause that you want, and you can also add clauses as well in there. So let's say, for example, you add something nuanced about your Dubai clients that you'd had written by a law firm, or within this larger firm, you've got something very specific as well. You can say, well, actually, we don't want Oversuite to create that particular clause. We want to take control of it. And in that scenario, we would never overwrite it. That you then own the control over that clause. If we make updates to it, it will flag to say, Oversuite have now made an update to this clause if you want it, and you can see what that is, and you can compare it to what you've got. And if it's better than yours or you prefer it, you can take it and override what you have. But ultimately, this is for you. It's not for us to dictate how you should do things. It's about for us to bring you best practice. But if you want to have if you've got something that you think's better, then absolutely you should be able to do that. And Oversuite is designed to allow you to add sections, add clauses, take control over clauses, turn our clauses off if you so choose. So yeah, it's a very, very flexible system. In that scenario, it would work perfectly for you. All good? Well, Levi, would you like to wrap things up and thank everyone?
Thanks, everyone. This was my first ever webinar, so you've all witnessed me. So thank you all for joining, and I just hope you found the session really valuable.
Yeah, that's cool. Well done, Levi. I know I dropped this on you, but I did a brilliant job, and it's great that that people got to hear you talk so passionately about Oversuite. Jamie's just posted a question in there. I know you're going to reach out with everyone to arrange demos if anybody wants to go through it in more depth, and share some various things from the webinar as well. Everyone will get a recording from this if you want to share it with your team. Any questions, please reach out. Really appreciate your time, guys. Thank you.